Are you gonna share your screen?
I was going to, but I'm not going to.
No.
Because there's so many, there's like 8 forms that change, and that would be jumping in and out too much.
You want me to do it? Okay.
Yeah.
And I can go to par, but obviously you're wrong.
Yeah, go to car.
So sorry. Do you want the camera up there? Or I could put it on the computer, the podium.
Yeah, I guess I could do, what, so how close is it gonna be to me though?
This is closer.
So they can hear me. Alright, so, yeah, they don't have to see me, if they just see them.
Oh, like.
Mine, that's way, no.
Okay, I'm going back.
No.
Relax. You're fine. There you go.
I feel like they could like smell me.
Oh my God. Hold on, I have chest crab. And it's like a really good web page. that
I
has
can
all-
guarantee I have alcohol pouring on the computer. I'm kid free for 30 weeks, guys. Bear with me. What you doing here? I'm questioning that right now. I'm gonna make it until 11 today, so.
There's a really good article that listed them all out. And now I'm trying to look for us.
Yes.
Yeah, we're having a whole bunch of.
So if you go to just the member login, it'll pop up here, the changes.
The changes,
on
okay.
it, Yeah.
I was like, I just saw a list of all of them.
Yeah. People can say if they are a fan.
All right, you want to put it on in?
Um,
Or do you want to just guess it? Oh, sorry.
And then I'll let you guess my password. So I know. And they announced last night that she was your license is wrong, but now all schools can offer like without this everything that I just found out about and finished my final yesterday morning for. But I can offer, which is a special. I don't want to report that unless they're So it would be, so I would log on to Zoom, so I have to go in classroom and on Zoom at the same time. So, but it has to be live. So those who need the certification to do the self-paced of the recordings. So I figured I might something like that, so I'll work at this point. But I feel like they're waiting for them to have that final. Like, oh, guess what, people?
This was the list that I knew how to find, which includes like a lot that you're probably not gonna go over today, but it should be everything.
This recording, holy, close to my face. So, yeah.
Because if you click on each one,
Oh,
So down
All the way
here
at the
at the
bottom.
start, yeah, so it'll be the changes. So if I go to.
It's that one, the view set of formal states, so it gives you that full list. But then you click on each one. Yeah, that's all of them.
Oh, yeah, because this is literally, yeah,
All of them, but there's a lot,
yeah, there was a lot of changes.
yeah,
Okay,
of like duplicates and stuff.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm only gonna go over the ones that
Right, that matter.
need an hour. Ah,
Okay,
okay,
should be good to go.
all right. Hi, friends. We are gonna go through this very fast. Third week's fun. Caitlin, am I recording? Yeah, it's recording. If you can't hear me at home, you can yell, I guess. All right, so there is a ton of forms that changed, that go into effect on Friday. So these are all of the changes. I put out an email last week, color coordinated, it was very pretty. And then I went back and I regretted after, so I apologize for the amount of typos that were in it. But I was doing it from my phone. Huh? It was pretty. All right, so I tell everybody when they present an offer, presentation is everything. You guys thought I knew what I was talking about for a minute, just because it looked pretty. All right, so we're only going to go through a few today because most of them are repetitive. So the agreement of sale, it changed the agreement of sale for commercial, for residential, manufactured, land, everything. Obviously, we're just going to go over residential today with those quick changes. The changes to the listing contract was listing for commercial, residential, sale and residential lease and commercial lease. Obviously, we're going to go over residential because all the changes are the same across the board for each of those forms. And then there was a change on the appraisal contingency addendum, which I guess we don't have to worry about because most of you guys don't use it. So that's all the calls that I get. And then there was one on the broker request for affirmation, which I'm going to assume most of you don't even know exists. And the one for the multiple offer summary worksheet. So I'm going to go through the quick ones first, and then I'm going to finish with the agreement of sale because that's probably going to be the most questions that we will have. I am. I'm going to go through that one. I'm going to explain what it means too. No, I honestly, I hate it at the same time. But yes. Okay. So the multiple offer summary worksheet. A lot of people don't know that even exists in there. So there is a form when you have multiple offers that you can present to your clients. Very self-explanatory when you go in. The only change to this form is it added the word date. So before it used to say acceptance by, and now it just says acceptance by date. I personally don't use this. I use a Google Sheet, but I follow the same format, but this is in DocuSign if you guys need it. It is good when you're presenting them side by side in front of your client and not behind the computer. I do mine personally before I even get there. Questions on that? Literally the only change was date. The next one. The price escalation addendum. I get questions about these all the time too. The only change for this was before it used to say with terms acceptable to the seller and a net purchase price less identified and the seller financial concessions equal to or higher than. So they only added the words equal to or higher than. Before it was just the price. Now I get the question all the time on just because the price is higher, do you have to go with it? You never have to do anything. It's whatever your seller wants. If your seller wants to accept the lower deal, it's the whole package as one. It's whatever is the best deal altogether. The price is not the end all do all. Okay, so even though it talks about the price in here, you can only negotiate on the escalation with the price, which is why it's written like that. But if your seller likes the cash deal that's $10,000 less, then by all means take the cash deal $10,000 less. Questions?
I have a question of it. So lots of times you have 4 offers and they all have escalation clauses.
Yep.
So technically,
Technically, you max them all out.
oh,
Well, if they beat each other out. So like if one's at 200 or maxes out at 200, and then the next one maxes out at like 205, that one's automatically going to go to 201. But then if you have one that's at 205, the other one's going to automatically go to 205. So if you take the highest escalation price and one beats it, then yes, you're technically going to max it out. Where's Sean Jones? Sean had an agent that did not know and just went 1,000 over what his client's offer was and lost his seller $32,000. Because what was your offer? 453 was the highest offer, right? And she had an escalation to like 450 or something like that. So it should have went to 452. Oh, right, that was your final. It should have been like 480, and she had the escalation up there, but she stopped it at only $1,000 over instead of the $1,000 over the highest up to that amount. And that's what they put. He's like, what do I do? I was like, sign as fast as you can. Don't say a thing. And they closed it, and the sellers will never know how much money was left on the table. So, importance of knowing your forms. Does that answer your question?
yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes I just go back and say, will you give us that price without the escalation? But I didn't know if technically they all X each other out. Okay.
As long as the numbers are there. Like if you have one where the escalation is 400,000 and their escalation is like 410, but there's nobody that was like between 400 and 410, then they just go to 401 or whatever. If it's a $5,000 escalation, then you go to 405. Okay. So I'm gonna do this one last. I'll go through quick. So a lot of people don't realize that the broker request for affirmation. So this form is there as proof that their offer was submitted to the client. So I get that question all the time on, I don't think that they really, presented my offer. They went with this other offer. I know for a fact my offer was better, blah, blah, blah. What do I do? Really hard to prove that they did not present it, but you can request that this form is filled out. And it has the details of your offer, and the seller has to sign it. What they changed down the bottom is, they changed their wordings to say their client instead of the client. And the client has waived in writing the right to receive other offers. And then down the bottom is they have now added, they just duplicated the top of it and added it to the bottom on the written request presentation of a counter offer. So if there was a counter offer, these are the terms that they would put on it, and you can use this as a counter offer form now instead of just a rejection. Did you guys know that form existed?
Yeah, but you know where to use it?
Yeah,
I know it's there, but I never use
I
it.
used it like twice and they don't send it back to sign.
Yeah, most people, and that's the other, yeah, so down the bottom, if there was a counter, now the buyer has to sign it, but the top, the seller does have to sign it, showing that there's proof, which is a new line that was added on there. There is none. BRFA. I had my thumb on it.
So technically, you can actually use this form for comfortable.
Yes,
Do we have to use it or we can just?
no, you don't have to, you can counter,
Over the phone, I mean, well, I understand everything in writing.
no. You can counter over the phone if you choose to. I'm being recorded, so I won't say what I do. Do as I say, not as I do, but I tell my kids. I prefer in writing. But I also am the agent that I will call all of my rejected offers and then follow up with an email, so they can't say that I didn't call them and, oh, it just went pending, and I just copy and paste like mine. So. There's my youngest calling to tell me that he tried a devil egg for the first time today, and my dad has him convinced that he's turning into the devil now. So what happens when you kids was damn pot for a couple weeks? Because I knew I was being tricked. Okay, appraisal addendum. changes on this, so the way that this form is supposed to work. I really think it should be written better, but it's not. So at the top, the appraised value equal or higher than the purchase price, or, and then you put the minimum. So if your client is willing to do a $25,000 gap and the purchase price is $350, then you would put on that line $325,000. That shows that they are willing to pay a gap of $25,000. I highly suggest writing it in an email when you are also presenting your offer so they understand, for those that don't understand the form, what you're trying to say in your offer. You don't want to lose it because they didn't understand on the other side, or have your client lose a lot of money. And I want to be clear, he did not lose. He was on the winning side of this. So option one, the changes they put in here, the form itself did not change. They just added more words to clarify things for agents. I don't think they did a good job at it, but they said they did. So if the minimum appraisal value is met, or if the appraisal is not completed within the contingency period, the buyer accepts the property and agrees to the terms of the release paragraph of the agreement of sale. If the minimum appraisal value is not met, the buyer will deliver a copy of the appraisal report to the seller within the contingency period, and they can either terminate or renegotiate. So option one, the only changes were they added in there, if the minimum appraisal value is not met. Before it just said, if the appraisal is not completed, or if value was not met. Now it says if minimum value was met, so that clears it all up for us, right guys? So option one is your contingency. So if your client wants the option to walk away because it did not appraise, then you will have them initial option one. You'll have the minimum at the top and then option one. So if they're willing to do that 25,000, you would have 325 up there and then option one. If it comes in at 320, they can renegotiate or terminate. Okay. Option two, I think, should state waiver, because that's technically, so many words, what it is. In option two, they do not have the right to terminate or renegotiate. So the changes in this is if the minimum appraised value is met, or if the appraisal is not completed within the contingency period, the buyer accepts the property and agrees to the terms to release the paragraph in the agreement of sale. The buyer further agrees to complete settlement at the purchase price by any of the following or a combination thereof. So the buyer can either provide additional funds, which means they can come up with the cash to still go to closing, adjust the loan amount stated in the mortgage or financing contingency period of the agreement of sale, or adjust the LTV ratio in the agreement of sale. The buyer's election of any option above shall prevail any like terms of the mortgage or financing contingency period of the agreement of sale. All other terms remain unchanged. The next part was that was changed. If the minimum appraised value is not met, this addendum is null and void. All terms of the mortgage and financing contingency period of the group of the agreement of sale remain unchanged and are in full force and effect. So basically, they're saying that if the terms are met, then everything stays the same in the agreement of sale. If the terms are not met, the buyer can either bring more cash, change their LTV, or adjust the loan amount stated. So for all of my friends that like to use the LTV as an out and not do an appraisal contingency, this form is telling you that option two, if you elect that one of those three has to be changed. Your buyer's either bringing more cash or changing the LTV. So that, in a sense, is your appraisal waiver. They cannot get out because of that. Now, it does say that they can rely on the paragraph. So if some people want to try to go in those gray areas and use the LTV as your out, you don't have the right to do so. If you read in the agreement of sale, only the seller can terminate based on the mortgage
financing. That the buyer has to continue to make a good faith effort to do everything they can to go to closing. The only way the buyer can get out of it is to provide a denial. Now, if you get a denial, and if the seller says, well, my people can get it done at this, that's them doing it. They can be at risk for losing their deposit. Do most agents want to fight back and forth right now? No. Are they just going to sign the termination and let everybody go and get the house sold and do their job? Yes, in this market. But when the market starts to turn and there's not as many buyers out there and the seller's trying to hold on to every penny they can, I guarantee there's going to be more issues. Best advice I can give you is cover your ass. Use the forms that are handed to you. If you have, like, I get it all the time where they're like, well, I don't want them to think that there's an appraisal contingency. We're just going to use the LTV. Guys, agents aren't stupid. Not all agents are stupid, okay? So most people know what you're doing. When I present my offer to my sellers, unless I see an appraisal waiver, I put you down for having an appraisal. I know at some point you're gonna try to come back and use that LTV. Like, so there's not like, oh, I'm gonna get over it. It's not. Say, if you're gonna use it as an out, put the form in and at least get your client's deposit back.
Someone said, you're reading the appraisal, you don't have to use this book at all, you just don't check off.
You don't have
Yeah,
to.
when you can say it,
Correct.
respectfully.
Correct. You don't have to. You don't have to use the form at all. If you're waiving it, you just don't check the appraisal contingency on the back, but let them know that you're waiving it. But a lot of people think that they're just not going to check it and then tell their clients, well, it's okay if it doesn't appraise, we can use the LTV to get out. It's a very gray area of fighting to try to get your client's deposit back. Right now in this market, most people just give up. A lot of people also don't know that it's only up to the seller to terminate an agreement of sale based off mortgage contingency. So they automatically give their clients back. But that one time that you promise your client that you can get them out using the LTV will be the time that you have an agent on the other side that knows their contracts.
So you know what you just do or just do the other one? Because I usually use the book.
I use the form for, like, I'm an open book.
A lot of agents are asking questions like, is the form, what, this is how it is.
Because I'm
They don't
trying
wanna
to
see
show
it.
you on top of it. I'm trying, no gray areas with me. I'm an open book. I'm showing you that we're waiting, that we cannot get out of this contract based on appraisal.
That's exactly what it says.
Yeah, say, I'm showing you that we're waiting it. Yes.
So say I had a 350, the house to appraise for my client by at 340 for them to have enough cash.
Say that again?
So say the house were underwritten for 350, but it has to appraise at 340 for them to have enough. Yeah, so we're going in at say 5% down, but we could switch from 3.5% down, whatever, to get enough cash. I write it up, the agreement sale with the 5%, but then I can do the B part for changing the loan back.
Correct.
Okay.
So so she's saying if she has a client that's put in 3% down right now, but if it didn't appraise, they could change it, put 5% down. Or if it was 5%, they put 3% down, so they would have more cash. You can do that because this addendum allows you to change that mortgage contingency.
So I just pick B,
Correct.
but normally I pick A if I'm doing that, if I have to have it appraised for something.
Correct.
Which is such a small down payment.
Well, she's saying she's figuring it out. Like, she would put on the top minimum of 340, and then if it came in where they can't make it, like, they could just, they know that they can figure it out with that $10,000 gap one way or another. If it appraised at, 320, they don't have the option. At that 320, if she did option A, they could try to figure it out, but if it doesn't work, they can still have negotiation room. Option B takes that negotiation out.
So, believe that, buyer will bring.
I do for everything, unless it's, you know, usually cash, but I do because I'm making it clear on if we are, you know, given the right to do it. So if I'm using it, yes, if they can only afford $15,000 to bring it, you absolutely want to have that, because if there's a $50,000 deficit, you don't want to be on the hook for it. So if it was, what did you say, 350?
But the house was, 495, we offered 525, so we are really.
Feel like this will work probably for that. Okay, so if you're, so yes, you have to raise for 510. That was like Sally had 6 pencil covered blueberries in there. So, yes, yeah, so it would be 510 on the top, and then you do option A. So that means if there's anything outside of that, they have the right to either renegotiate or terminate.
And actually, is where.
On the appraisal contingency.
And in that case, you don't really have to write the sale this in order.
No,
Using the
cut.
form.
Oh, sweet baby Jesus, please stop writing stuff on the last page of the agreement of sale for what you think is correct.
That's what she said, right? As far as I understood. In agreement of sale, they wrote. So you just have.
This form does it. We are not lawyers. We do not write anything on that last page that you cannot back up. You guys can, one letter or word can be misinterpreted on that last page of the agreement of sale. It is spelled out for you. Now, what I do is when I send in my offer with this form attached, I always have a summary of my offer that I send over when I present my offers. In that summary, I will say, you will notice that my client is willing to cover a $15,000 gap, as you will see on the appraisal contingency form. I simply just bring their attention to the form to take a look at what my clients are willing to do. But if, for whatever reason, you write something on that last page that they're willing to do, and there was some kind of typo or something along those lines, a lawyer's gonna find a way around that, on that typo. The other ones that I keep seeing of people that they're willing, you know, for informational purposes only.
Right.
Yes, that is so open to whose information. Like, you have to be so detailed in these. If your client wants an inspections, do the inspections. Okay, informational purpose is not worth the paper that you wrote on. Or when they say that they won't nitpick, that's my favorite one. Well, what does that mean? To me, it means nothing. If you just want them to have an inspection, best thing that I can tell you to do, elect inspections, and then do a red line through the contingency, which means they cannot walk away, they cannot negotiate, that they just simply are doing it, being recorded, so probably shouldn't. Oh, I'm so tempted.
Turn off that recording from.
Yeah, all right. Welcome to Heather's classes, guys. Come back to good girl, Heather. All right, any other questions on the appraisal contingency? Moving on to, oh, I forgot that I was supposed to be letting you guys follow along with these forms, so I apologize at home. I don't even know how to do that. So. I'm going to go into the listing contract. So we are going to do the exclusive rights to sell. So again, this same paragraph that has changed covers the listing contract for lease for commercial, lease for residential, and sale for commercial and residential. So the change for this starts on page 4. So now if you look, the listing contract is now 7 pages instead of 6. And for those that don't know, if you log into PAR's website and go on each form, there's a guideline for how to fill out every form. And when there's changes, they do a red line version, so you can see the difference between that last contract and this contract. Val, I just saw your comment. So the mortgage contingency protects the buyer. The mortgage contingency only protects the buyer if they're giving a true denial for it. Other than that, the seller can continue to try to figure out financing. And they have to, keep going in good faith. And we'll get into that when I talk about the mortgage, the new mortgage contingency box. So if the appraisal doesn't come back from the lender, is that what you're asking? So if the appraisal doesn't come back, like doesn't come back in time in that like 30 days, at sales price, if it doesn't come back in at sales price, then if you did option A on the appraisal contingency, then you have the right to negotiate or terminate. If you did option B, then your buyer has to figure it out, either bringing the, either more money, changing the LTV, or changing the loan amount. It's all right. All right, so page 4. All right, so the stuff that you see in red are things that were changed or added into the contracts. The things that are in blue were things that were already in place before but have now moved in the contract. Okay, so minor changes, but very important. So for the MLS, a lot of people don't understand. So it's not a Pennsylvania Association of Realtors rule. It is a Bright rule that within 24 hours of public marketing, 24 business hours, so 1 business day, of public marketing, it has to be entered into the MLS. The fines have went up horrifically in the past year, 2 years, I think a year it was. So it used to be like a couple $100, $1,000. You do not get a warning if they have proof that you publicly market it without entering it into the MLS. Your first fine is $5,000. No warning. You can appeal, but if you don't win it, $5,000. Your second one is $7,500. Your third one is $10,000.
What consists of?
Anything outside of our office is considered public marketing.
And that is,
Yep, that's not to the public. Anything.
And even installing the sign, right?
Installing a sign, anything that a public eye can see that is not an agent in our office is considered public marketing.
I thought it said public, when it was written communication to your office, I thought that was included as public marketing.
No, because you can sign an office exclusive form, which is the loophole around it. So if you have an offer or office exclusive form, you can send it, your client has to sign it, you send that to Bright, and it does not need to be in there when you have it. So that is outside, that's the only loophole is inside of this office. Not any other Keller Williams, we run into that, just our office. If you have a client that says that they don't want it to be advertised on the internet, but they want other agents to still be able to see it and bring their buyers in, they have to understand that you can still put it on the MLS, but there is a button that says you want it publicly displayed. If you answer no, it's not going to go into the, what is it called, the IBS?
not gonna put it out everywhere on the internet, it's only going to be in Bright. So your job is to educate them, when they say, I don't want it on the internet, the difference between, okay, I can only advertise to people in my office, and they'll say like, well, what about word of mouth? Can you put it on Facebook? Can you, run an ad? No. Only inside the office. If they want you to be able to talk to other agents, send emails, advertise, put it on Facebook, but they just don't want it on like Zillow, Realtor.com, stuff like that, then it has to be on the MLS, but it does not have to be public. Okay? So remember the fines. People always say, well, what will happen to my license? Nothing, but $5,000 that our office is not paying.
Questions sort of like this, because I don't understand why the police. And
So please, sir, just like
the police, the bright police.
I was like, oh my God.
Yes, the bright police. When.
This is gonna pause my recording.
I don't know why the police would.
The bright police. And what they did was, they told me that my dates didn't match up for when I put it in trend or whatever, right? And, then I pended it. They told me they were too close together. Then they took the listing out of Bright and called the listing side of it a non.
So it was basically a non-marketed, yes.
So,
So they thought you had a pocket listing, so what people are doing is they will publicly market it, get their buyer, and then hurry up and just put it in Bright and then go pending. They know that in that hour, or if you went up and there was only like a 5-minute gap, that you didn't show it in that 5 minutes, because remember, you cannot show a house unless it's active in the MLS, or if you have that marketed or the office exclusive form, you cannot show the house. So some of these, like some people will go coming soon, you cannot show a house in coming soon status, go coming soon, and then all of a sudden it goes pending and doesn't go active. Now, can you accept an offer sight unseen? Yes. So let's prove it then.
so the seller gave me the buyer, never met the buyer. And I did everything electronically to the buyer and the seller.
Was it active when this happened? Or did you go under contract?
Hold on.
I had it listed.
I got really nervous.
But I didn't have it active in Bright. I had the listing done, but again, that's why I'm asking you the dates.
I'm pausing the recording so you don't have to go, please, hold on.
And I'll have Caitlin resend it out to the office of the Bright off market, which is office exclusive, and it literally states in there, cannot be marketed outside of our office. It cannot, no public marketing. Now, at some point, if they decide to change their minds, you can do an addendum and then put it on the market. But I have done it in my listing contracts where I've added in, they took this line doing. But I've added it in under additional terms that we will do from this date to this date, office exclusive. If it's not pending by this date, it will go active in the MLS. So this way I don't have to go back and get an addendum signed. I just have the office exclusive, and then if it doesn't sell by then we go active. So this way, if Bright has any questions, so you'll send your listing contract and that form, there's an email on the form, you send it over to Bright, and they know that if anybody reports it, that you had this off exclusive. Now, the way around it is like, oh, I heard someone talking, and now this agent called me, well, they're gonna say, no, no, come in, but
There's a broker, a legal corporation.
yes,
Just a time and time.
it's stating that you're not willing to cooperate with another, you can do that.
So, I was gonna say, because I did exactly that for the settlement of going through to class. Is there anything I should have with
Are you
sellers?
in
I'm in Bright, I put it in Bright, we're pending anyway.
pending, like right away?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad I gave it us, so I going this 3 weeks ago.
God, it would be recorded.
We can talk outside of this if you want, because I have to.
Oh my- You guys have me like sweating. Leave it alone if they didn't catch on.
Okay,
They would have caught on
okay.
already with the down pending, so.
I'm listening here and I'm like, okay, that's exciting. Like,
The last one that I did like that, I literally was going active. I did truly get an off market, I mean, it's sight unseen. She owned the unit next door, so she knew what it looked like, and it went coming soon. And I got an offer of $50,000 over asking cash, no inspections, like closing in like 10 days. And my client was like, I don't even want to show it, like, I'm done. And I'm like, people are like, I'm totally getting reported for this. So I was like, look, I'm gonna, like, so I left it active for like an hour and let like 3 other agents in, and then we signed off on it. And I just had a heart attack.
Yeah, I didn't get to do the other half.
That.
So suggestions on the timing with dropping a sign and all that, I mean, you would have to have the listing agreement signed before you can drop a sign.
Yes,
And
that's like chapter 4 in pre-license.
yeah. No, I'm just saying,
You cannot advertise a house that you do not have written permission for.
right, okay, no, because you said something earlier about the sign part.
So if you put a
24
sign, you have to be in Bright within 1 business day.
Okay,
So some people will put it on like a Monday, but they don't put it in Bright until like Friday, and then like go active. You can't have that gap.
Effective Friday. Business day is no longer a calendar day.
It is, oh, it is the.
Yes. Which they're saying that we work on a 7-day period, so.
Yeah. So yeah, for those that work 7 days a week, don't recommend it, but yes, calendar days now. So just 24 hours. Goes in, sign goes up, put it in Bright.
But you are, or whoever, like, are they in agreement with Frank about these signs and all these things, or what? Like, because this is.
I think they know that until another system is created, like Bright, they don't have a say if we want to have an MLS. So they kind of don't have a choice in these things. I miss Trend, but
I do too.
yeah, but yeah, Bright is definitely taking advantage of this market. And I will say, it's not Bright that sits there and like governs this, like, oh, this went pending, like, we're gonna get it, like, agent, I'm totally recorded right now, but I'm like, agents are assholes, guys. Like, if you ever made an agent mad in the past, or they called on this, they're watching you. And as soon as they get the chance to hit that report button, that's what they're doing.
Yeah, but it's a money generating thing for them.
It
to
is.
raise the,
It is, in this market, to raise to 5,000,
That's great.
it absolutely is. So, just, now, with appeals, I did win our last appeal, but we had, like, so as an office, we have no prior fines for that thing. Like for the 5,000 or the 7,500. If you as an agent don't have any violations against you, the appeal process, I don't want to say is simple, but yes, they will, you know, tell your story, they will hear it. Now, if you have fine after fine after fine and then try to come back with it, it's there.
So since I wasn't fined, do I have something against me?
No, you would have had, so, oh man, I get at least 10 a day of Bright MLS violations. So you would get a violation email stating what your violation is. Generally, it'll say that you have 24 hours to correct this. So if you did not get that, when they look in your subscription ID or whatever it is, it will not show any violations against you in the past, but they can see all of the violations that I learned in our last appeal, that it's all on file against you there. It doesn't go away. Yes,
They are the police.
they really are like,
At least I have some, previous. send me something about, in the description, we had a 2-story foyer, and they called to complain that it was a 1-story house. Well, it is a 1-story house, but the foyer went up to, it had a peek in the roof. I'm like, isn't that?
Things
something
that-
you can't
yes.
figure out that that's
I
two
disagree
stories?
with that very much.
Jay loves that report.
I'm like, really?
Then it's not the ceiling, but the foyer is safety.
Yeah,
Can you know? I said, they called me to ask me to explain that. to
some
them.
of those things that they will report are not finable, but you will get an accuracy reporting where they'll send to you to report. They are live emails. If you just hit reply back to the email, you can explain and state your case right there in the email. When it is something, the number one that I get is not having a picture. I actually had 3 this morning. Please put pictures in. Even if it says photo coming soon, that's a picture apparently to Bright. So as long as there is something there as a photo, then, but they will report it and you can get fined for that. Or keeping things pending when they have closed, or keeping it with a contingency too long. People get frustrated. They're
So
only,
many listings with no bonus being there for.
it's because
days and
people
days
are
and
not reporting them. Like, that's what I said, Bright is not policing this. It's your peers out there in the world that are hitting report. So if that agent has a really good reputation with other people and they're like, oh, you know, it's Karina, we'll let that one go. And then they're like, oh, it's, you know, Heather report. That's where they come from. Okay. All right. So around that, the change in this was, oh, my recording again. Yeah. Sorry if you're watching this recording back. Oh, I was. Totally just kidding. It's truly just a picture. All right, so it says an MLS is a subscription service used by real estate licensees to market properties to other subscribers. If marketed in an MLS, the broker will make an offer of cooperating compensation to another participant who procures a buyer for the property. See paragraph 7, we'll come back to that. So the MLS marketing is governed by specific rules and policies which may differ depending on the MLS used. Sellers have the right to decide whether their property will be marketed in the MLS, but should understand that opting out of the MLS marketing may restrict brokers' ability to market the property in other ways. So in that box, if you check off, the broker will not use an MLS to advertise the property. They added in that the seller understands and agrees that the listing may be reported to an MLS, but will not be marketed for sale via an MLS. Further, the seller understands and agrees that any and all public marketing of the property through the use of other means such as yard signs, social media, public-facing websites may be prohibited. Seller may be required to sign an additional waiver or release to comply with the MLS rules and policies. So that's what we discussed a little bit ago. So this next one, the broker will use the MLS to advertise the property to other real estate brokers and salespersons for the listing. Broker shall communicate with the MLS of all sellers elections made below. The seller agrees that the broker and licensee and the MLS are not responsible for mistakes in an MLS on the advertising. So then it goes into, they pretty much just changed the wording or how it's spelled out to the virtual office website and internet data exchange, instead of just saying that the IDX or the MLS at that point. All of that stayed the same. It just kind of was pushed down. So they can check off the seller does not want the listed property to be displayed on the internet. So that's where there is options on the MLS. Now, if you're not sure, I will say Bright does have a very nice help desk and they will walk you through things. So if you don't know, like if you have a client that's adamant that they want to be publicly marketed, but not on the internet, call Bright and just make sure that you're doing it correctly so it doesn't go out to the public or out on the internet. The other, on page 5, any questions on any of that? I just want to come back to that first line again. So it says that MLS is a subscription service to the real estate, to market properties to other. If marketed in the MLS, a broker will make an offer of cooperating compensation to another participant. So they're saying that if you're putting it in the MLS, you have to have something on that line to offer to that other agent. Now they cannot specify how much. So this is where the gray areas are gonna come in, where people will go back to offering $1. But they're allowed to offer $1, they're allowed to offer $5, they're allowed to offer $10,000. It doesn't matter what they offer, they're just no longer allowed to put 0 on that line. In bright, so the compensate, or the cooperation, where you put in the percentage or, yes, so we have to offer to pay the other agent, but the gray area that they don't touch on is that you can't offer 50 cents if you want to, but something has to be offered. Okay? You can put zeros on them, it just has, it's if they procure a buyer. So if it's a sub agent or transaction, they're not procuring the buyer anyway. So the next change on the listing contract, we are clearly going over 2 o'clock here, guys. FERPDA. Okay, that's it. That was added in, there was no changing on it. Does everybody know what FERPDA is? So Foreign Investment in Real Estate Property Tax Act. FERPDA. So there is a form, I actually just had my first one ever. So it wasn't awful, you just have to basically ask the seller if they bought it as a foreign investment, and the reason that they have to let you know if they do, or if it was purchased as a foreign investment, is because some money will be held at closing. So your buyer can actually be held liable if, because you can't go after a seller that does not pay taxes, for taxes. So there are certain percentages that the title companies have to hold to pay the IRS, and then if there's an overage, it'll go back to the sellers, but the buyers are on the hook if they don't. So although this has been a thing, has been around since 1980, older than I am, then they, now they just added it in for information for your client. So you can just ask them and then skip it if they say no. If they go into details about it, there is a paragraph there that they can read and it'll educate them a little bit. Okay? So they are the lovely changes on the listing side. And that was it for that. Questions? Next one was the agreement of sale. Like how close it is. So again, the agreement of sale goes for commercial, manufactured homes, new construction, the standard agreement of sale, which is what we're going to go over, and vacant land.
So that's for 7/22. All these changes are happening for next month.
Friday.
But if I'm doing one today,
If you're doing one today, so the other, this form is not even available until Friday. So if you're writing an agreement of sale, then you're still covered
today or tomorrow.
on today's, yes. Yep. So as of Friday, and I could be totally making this up, I believe it automatically updates in, it automatically updates in PAR, but I think it automatically updates in .loop and DocuSign. But if you have it saved where you do it somewhere else, you may want to update your forms as of Friday. All right, so the changes on this. Page 3, 4, 5. Okay, So if you notice, so it says, buyer financing, the paragraph before used to be the mortgage contingency would come first. And you would automatically start out with electing or waiving. They have moved the buyer financing paragraph first, and it's not under the contingency now. So it used to be the mortgage contingency, and then this used to be a sub-paragraph under the mortgage contingency. It's its own paragraph now because PAR is stating that the, these guidelines, I don't know if I'm guidelines, I don't know what these terms, I guess, are for all buyers, not just those that are electing to have a mortgage now. So the first change was the buyer may elect to make this agreement contingent upon financing or obtaining mortgage financing, regardless of any contingency in this agreement. If the buyer chooses to obtain mortgage financing, the following terms apply. So I used to get this question all the time because people would automatically check, you know, they see waived and they tell their seller it's a cash buyer. Just because it's waived does not mean they're paying cash. It has always said on that line that the buyer reserves the right to obtain financing. It's just not contingent upon it. But most people don't read that and they automatically assume that it's waived. And then they get into the argument that they don't have to let an appraiser in, or they don't have to do this, or they don't have to do that. They do, if they're going to accept it. That's your job to educate your seller for that. So it just went down to, again, if the buyer, you know, the buyer will be in default of this agreement if the buyer furnishes false information to anyone concerning the buyer's financial or employment status, or if they fail to cooperate in good faith. So regardless if they are cash, not cash, or obtaining it but not contingent, and they do a BFI or something along those lines and lie anywhere on there, they are at risk for losing their deposit. And then the next change says the seller will provide access to insurer's representatives and may be required by the mortgage lender to surveyors, municipal officials, appraisers, and inspectors. So they are literally just spelling it out for you that regardless on what is waived on page, or waived or elected on page 4, page 3 is stating that every buyer has the right to bring an appraiser or an insurance representative or somebody through the house if required. They can, yep, because they're still, the cash is technically their financing. And then that was the only change, was now that the buyer financing is the paragraph in itself, and that they have the right to bring those people through. The only other changes is all the other wording was the same on it. It's just they're different numbers on the agreement of sale, which is why the numbers are in red, but the information's in blue. Question on that part of it before I go into the next part. All right, so page 4. All right, so page 4, the next part is now F under the buyer financing. So it used to be the mortgage financing and the buyer financing was underneath it. Now the buyer's financing is the paragraph and the mortgage contingency is a subparagraph. If you also notice that the FHA and VA box has been moved up, not under the contingency, just under the buyer financing in general, but the mortgage contingency. So they added in the wording. So again, these are things that have been in effect for years. It's just bringing clarity to it, or specifying now. So it says, wait, the sale is not contingent on mortgage financing, although the buyer may obtain mortgage financing and or the parties may include an appraisal contingency. So that has always been there. But then they added in the buyer and seller understand that the waiver of this contingency does not restrict buyer's right to obtain mortgage financing for the property. They're basically repeating themselves, so you have to read it twice. Okay? Nowhere in that does it say this buyer is cash. So don't tell your client that it's cash, because that's where the problems come from. You said it was cash. Ask the client. And if they say, yes, it's cash, I go back and tell my clients, they're telling me that it's cash. But if they decide that they want to take out a mortgage or some kind of financing,
they have the right to do so, but they cannot withdraw from the contract due to not obtaining that mortgage at that point. Okay?
And if they don't qualify for the mortgage,
If they don't qualify for the mortgage, they lose their deposit. I strongly advise if people put waived on there to ask for a substantial deposit. So this way, if they walk away, obviously, if they're putting waived on that, you still want some kind of proof of funds. So if they're giving you a pre-approval, that's great, but what happens if they don't get the mortgage? You want to see that they have a plan B. Okay? So the next one on that, the only thing that they changed was for the elected, the sale is contingent upon the buyer obtaining mortgage financing according to the terms outlined below. Shocker. Upon receiving documentation demonstrating the mortgage lender's approval, whether conditional or outright, of the mortgage applications according to the following terms. So it's basically saying that everything is what's going to be in that box. So the boxes stay the same, it just changed positions on the actual agreement.
Haven't they moved the commitment date to the, I think that was a.
And, right, the commitment date was moved to.
Under elected, we're
At the
elected
right.
part.
Right, so my sample goes right through that.
Oh, it used to be right on the bottom.
Yes, so under the commitment or under the box, the commitment date used to go down, but now it's under elected because it's stating that you're obviously, you're only gonna have a commitment if they are electing it. So the next change that they did on number 2 is the seller may terminate this agreement after the commitment date by notice if the seller does not receive a copy of the documentation demonstrating the mortgage lender's conditional or outright approval of the buyer's mortgage application by the commitment date. So if that commitment date comes and goes, the seller has the right to terminate. So know your dates. Or the documentation demonstrating the mortgage lender's conditional or outright approval of the buyer's mortgage application does not satisfy the loan terms outlined in paragraph 8F. So when we come up to that mortgage commitment, again, the seller may terminate the agreement if those terms are not met. It does not say the buyer cannot, the seller cannot. The documentation demonstrating the mortgage lender's conditional or outright approval for the buyer's mortgage application contains any conditions. It stays the same after that. So once you've received the commitment, they have 7 days to clear the conditions other than the ones that have to be cleared within like 24 hours before closing or the day of closing, stuff like that. But they did add into the last line that goes into the top of the next page. Termination of this agreement by the buyer due to the mortgage lender's denial of the buyer's mortgage application may demonstrate bad faith by the buyer and result in the forfeiture of deposit monies to the seller. So again, it's kind of saying if you try to use those gray areas, your buyer can lose their deposit. Cover your ass. So don't try to use it as loopholes. That was it for changes in the agreement itself. Questions on changes for the agreement?
it appears that they've given the buyers no rights to protect.
So I actually think that that gives this, well, I think it gives the sellers more right of protection because it's spelling out that the buyers can't just automatically terminate based on this and expect to get their deposit back. I think it's making it more clear that the seller has the right to terminate, not the buyer. And when I was talking to one of the par lawyers, and they were saying it's because so many of the calls that they're getting are off of that LTV. And they're just trying to clarify more that, you know, to do this. So that was what everybody is using, that LTV these days.
If the mortgage commitment's late and seller hasn't terminated, but then maybe it's have the over, would
So, no, so it's safe in here. Alliance. See? So the documentation demonstrates the mortgage lender's outright approval and meets the condition or specifies in this agreement, the buyer may settle another property appraisal, blah, blah, blah. So the seller's right to terminate continues until the buyer delivers documentation demonstrating the mortgage lender's conditional or outright approval of the buyer's application to the seller. Until the seller terminates this agreement pursuant to the paragraph, the buyer must continue to make a good faith effort in obtaining the mortgage financing. So as soon as they receive them, then yes, they cannot terminate unless the conditions are not met. Right, so as long as there's conditions on there and that 7 days goes by, if it's day 8 and you don't have something updated that states that the conditions are cleared, the seller does have the right to terminate. Yes, but they're supposed to be cleared within 7 days.
So the old agreement, the buyer wasn't allowed to do that.
So you have to send it to the other agent, and it's up to the agent. I asked part of this question because I was actually on that line too. So before we weren't obligated, like as we were obligated to send it to the other agent, but they're not obligated to send it or to give it to the seller. So now if the seller, the way they explained it to me is if the seller requests, they have the right to say it. But only probably you don't have to send it to the seller, but if they request it, then they do have the right to say it.
You're talking about the appraisal?
The mortgage commitment. But yes, I mean, I would send it to the other agent, even if they don't request it up front, just so they can't say that they didn't have it and like, oh, you're out of, contract.
Do we still have to wait for 7 days? Or we can actually request that they would dated by the date.
So you're stating, so the lenders that are notorious from setting down a mortgage commitment, it has everything that is needed from day one of the mortgage.
Right.
And then you're saying by this mortgage commitment, they said, oh, well, I already sent you over the mortgage commitment.
No,
Those
I'm
lenders?
saying, so they usually receive that the first mortgage, with a lot of conditions.
There's usually only one mortgage commitment, and that's comes out around this date. There are specific lenders that will send out a mortgage commitment that has every condition possible.
They will some.
Yeah, so the mortgage, a conditional approval and the mortgage commitment are the same thing. So when they send that over with all those conditions,
Right.
they technically have 7 days to clear those.
Okay, so I cannot request the updated, right? Because when they send, conditions to the underwriter, they might get the second conditional approval with some conditions still left and some clear. So I should not ask for a paper one. I just have to wait for 7 days to clear those conditions.
Yes.
Oh,
Any conditions that are on an approval, no matter when you receive it. The mortgage commitment date is just the last day that they can send you that commitment, or your seller can terminate. If they decide to send it 5 days before it was due, they still have 7 days to clear it. It is 7 days cleared after the date, and not from receiving it. So that works the same way as like the inspection contingency period. So if there's 14 days, the negotiation starts after those 14 days. Your mortgage commitment date, they have 7 days after the commitment date to clear the conditions.
But the date of the conditional approval doesn't really
Doesn't make a
matter.
difference.
2 years, 3 weeks.
Right.
Okay, that's
Regardless,
what
they have 7 days from the commitment.
Yeah, I understand.
I saw the look on your face.
No, I understand. I was trying to process the second sentence
Okay.
that you said, that even if they send it 5 days.
Yeah,
before
even if they
end
send
of
it
the
5
day.
days, then they have 12 days to clear the condition.
Exactly, that's what I was
Okay,
trying
yes.
to.
That's where I thought I lost you. Any other questions? All right.
That's fun. All right, let's stop the share. Any questions at home?
No, thank you.
No problem. And this was recorded. I don't know where the recording is going to be, but it is recorded for those that were asking.
Thanks so much.
All right, have a good day.
You too.
Thank you, Heather.